What is up, everybody? Happy Monday to you. You know, it's interesting. The world is crazy. The world is crazy. So much stuff going on. I was listening to this channel called the Canadian Prepper this morning, and he was talking about the U.S. possibly planning on attacking Venezuela. Obviously, there's some attacks on Iran that's pending. A lot of stuff going on in the world today. And it's like, you look at some of this stuff play out, and it's just like, again, what will be, will be. And so then you go into like the social stuff, right? And some of the interesting takes that I have been hearing lately, I've been following, I don't know, I just recently subscribed to this channel by this guy named Mr. Let Go, right? And he's one of those rabbit hole channels, right? And apparently he's been getting demonetized on YouTube because he's been going in on Charlie Kirk's wife. And I've been seeing a number of different bloggers and rabbit holers, if you will, on YouTube. And I'm sorry, my eyes are itching me. Going in on this conspiracy that somehow Charlie Kirk's wife is not the sad widow that, obviously she is being projected to be. Now, I think that, obviously it's too soon for these types of conspiracies. I think that you can read people's body language and conclude all kinds of things. But, this guy got me just, he's like one of those Candace Owens channels where they're rabbit hole people. And so, you're like, okay, what they talking about? And then you don't even mean to be there more than like 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden, the more you keep hearing them, the more you're like, huh, they're connecting a lot of dots. So this dude, Mr. Let Go, he is just like on this rabbit hole of Erica Kirk, her ties to, I guess, some Christian nonprofit in Romania, where apparently there were some children who were trafficked to various different countries like Israel and the UK and different private islands, right? And so I'm listening to this dude, and I'm like, and this is obviously her organization. It is her. So that part is not the conspiracy. What they were accused of, obviously, you know, there's news articles that people are kind of putting together. But, and I apologize, my eyes are just so itchy. But yeah, they're saying that, they're kind of creating this narrative that perhaps Erica Kirk was like a handler, and she was like selected to be specifically Charlie Kirk's handler. And this is a rabbit hole that I have not heard Candace Owens go down, right? And my whole thing is, if Candace Owens is not going down that rabbit hole, then, it's kind of hard for me to believe the rabbit hole, really, because she's like Queen Rabbit Hole on the internet. But Candace is really focused on the shooter, and, poking the holes in the federal investigation and just kind of tying some, I guess some oddities, if you will. Candace Owens is good with tying in the oddities. Like, she's really good at asking rhetorical questions. She's really good at, kind of poking holes with just the oddities of things, right? And it's not necessarily that, she is or is not onto something, because she could be onto something. She's always onto something, but I think, Candace kind of hurts herself is that she doesn't close the loop, right? There's a rabbit hole, right? But there's a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. And I think that, she does a lot of good investigation. She does a lot of good research. She does what every investigator should do. But at the same time, she just leads people down these rabbit holes with like, it's like leaving you dry. It's like that Radiohead song, like "Don't Leave Me High and Dry," right? She's gonna leave you kind of dry in the end. And I would love her investigations if they actually like resulted in an arrest, or outside of like assumption. Like, I'm curious about this Bridget Macron thing because obviously Candace wants to be sued by these people because she wants the discovery. She wants to be able to have Brigitte Macron go under oath, and say that no, I'm a biological woman, right? And so, this is an interesting lawsuit because obviously Candace knows what she's doing, but Candace and her little rabbit holes, I swear, she's a very resilient person, yes, but at the same time, I really feel like Candace is dealing with, she's going up against forces that I feel like can get her touched, if you know what I mean. And you can play with some of these people all you want to, and you could be exercising your freedom of speech, but at the end of the day, if these people didn't learn anything from Charlie Kirk, unfortunately, is that if people want you gone, they will get you gone. And that's just what it is. I'm tired. I look tired. I've worked all day. But just kind of going back to some of the interesting things that I've heard, though, this guy, check out his channel if they still have it on because they keep demonetizing him because he keeps revealing rabbit hole stuff about Erica Kirk. And, again, I take everything with a grain of salt. I'm not surprised what some of these demons are out here doing. I'm not surprised how they're projecting people to be. I don't know. But at the same time, Candace Owens has not touched it. So I'm not really ready to go down the Erica Kirk rabbit hole, per se. Nick Fuentes has been on the mic. And I think that, I've long said that they're going to use Nick Fuentes to probably they're going to try to use Nick Fuentes to take Candace Owens out the game. But Nick is not as sharp as Candace. Um, I think real talk, people wanted Candace and Nick to debate, but I think if anything, with her um, sitting down across with Nick Fuentes, it really proved that Candace can trigger that man. She can probably flex on Nick Fuentes. So he wasn't a good agent to use to take out Candace Owens, and that's just what it is. But on a different front, one of the things that I was really curious about was that relationship between Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum. Because you got two people who kind of started, they rose up, you know, similar passion. They did the Blexit thing. I think, Turning Point USA. I don't think Brandon did. Yeah, he did do Turning Point USA. But one of the things that I often thought of is because Brandon Tatum is obviously on the pro Israel side. He's all about defending Israel. Obviously, he knows what gets him his coins, right? They need a black face representing pro Israel stances, and Brandon Tatum is their guy, right? Amongst other things that they need a black face to project. He's their guy, right? But I often wondered, right, what is the relationship with Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum like now that Candace is obviously showing, drastically different views than Brandon, right? And so I happened to be looking at YouTube this
The
morning
body
and
scanner
I
reveals the brutal
see
truth about your body that your regular scale
Brandon. Oh, I see. Let me get this commercial going. I see Brandon Tatum. He did a video, and it's called "Why Are You Friends with Candace?" And Brandon, he has this guest on who's obviously pro-Israel, like he is, and now she's questioning him. And let me get into this.
Me. He's like anti-Semitism is as old as Judaism itself. It just kind of reinvents itself. And if you see it this time around, an American like I my say all of them are evil. Tucker Carlson is not my friend. I don't know him whatsoever, and I bash him every chance I get. I saw that on X. And there's other people who are not my friends. We don't have a connection, so I don't have to be friends with them, and I can not listen to their content anymore. But if you let me, I just want to tell you the thing that's very dangerous about what Candace Owens is doing, and even though she is your friend, and she would probably say, "Oh yeah, you're gonna accuse me because of me," but no, when you start with this kind of anti-Semitism, I'd rather use Jew hatred. Okay, it's Jew hatred. When you spread this kind of Jew hatred, and you're constantly blaming the Jews and blaming the Jews, and all these people who start hating the Jews and whatever, the next thing you know, they're shooting up a synagogue, or they're going to a school, and it just pains me because I have children too. It's scary. It's really scary because you're putting these thoughts in these wackadoodles' minds.
I mean, but I'll be honest with you. That's how the social psyops work, though. Really. I mean, these people, like, let's just say Tyler Robinson, he was completely, inspired, by some extreme rhetoric on the left, as some people want to make the argument. This is how these social herd mentality, radical idealisms work, though. So beyond the threat to, to Jewish people, right? This is how these things work. So she is right, that the more people discuss, their maybe disdain or their dislike for what they think Israel or even Jewish involvement is with America, right? There's a way that you say things, right? And here's the thing, even if you say something in the most scrupulous way, there's always going to be somebody who's really passionately ignorant. They're running on some, moral, idealism of their self and their people that prohibits anybody from being able to say anything, you know, about them. And I don't agree with that either. I think that for any group that can fix their lips to criticize any other group, you are on the chop block too. So I don't really agree with, we should not talk about, Jewish people no more than we shouldn't talk about black people or white people, right? I mean, if you're going to delineate yourself, it's like if you're in America, everybody getting talked about. If you want some shit, if your people on some shit, just like with black people, it's like if my people on some shit, we on some shit, and I will call out my people on some shit, right? But people need to be able to do the same thing with their people, and they don't because they don't want to. They act like they're immune from scrutiny, and that's not. You're never going to get respect from anybody operating like that at all. You're never going to get respect from anybody when you start going into governments asking to pass laws specifically for your people and to protect speech, even down to religious speech against what you believe is a threat to your people. It's like some of these people, you say that, you're ugly and they're like, that's a threat. No, that's an opinion. That's an opinion. You take it as a threat to your self-confidence. Oh well, but it's not a physical threat to you. And so, people play a lot of weird ass mind games, but I will agree with her that yeah, if you start perpetuating rhetoric and idealisms about a group of people, it is going to radicalize people who will adopt those ideas. And these people aren't really hearing this rhetoric to discriminate against what will be perceived as a good Jew or a bad Jew. They're not going to delineate. It's just if you're a Jew, you're a Jew. Same thing with Christians, right? If you talk a whole bunch of shit, bad rhetoric about Christians constantly, right? And people have a disdain for Christians, right? The people are not going to delineate. Their mindset is the title, the person, the people, what they represent. That is what they don't like, and so they're not going to delineate between what is a good Christian or a bad Christian. If they have evil spirits inside of them that is inciting them to act on some rhetoric, right, they're not going to delineate. It's like these psychopaths that go into these churches, right, and they're not delineating that these are just good, decent people, hardworking people trying to make a living, and they're going up in there. No, they're running on a demonic spirit, right? And an idealism, an ideology that was fostered and is perpetuated in America in so many different ways. So you got anti-Semitic, rhetoric. You got anti-black rhetoric. You got anti-white rhetoric. You got anti a lot of groups rhetoric in America, and all of us are having to deal with that rhetoric. Some of us have dealt with it longer than other people in this country. But anyways, I think it's interesting because Brandon in this podcast
and that's where I think what she is doing is very dangerous, because it's like she'll say things like, trust me, I know, I have on good sources, I have this. Show the receipts. That's the problem with the other side right now, is they just say these things like, trust me, bro, I have the receipts, and then they put these things out there. They play offense. And what they do is they put the people like you and I on defense. So we're constantly like
Okay, so Brandon says in this podcast or whatever, this show, whatever, that Candace is his friend, and he wants, he's gonna remain her friend because obviously he respects her different viewpoint, and he's hoping that she'll come around. And he basically was talking about all the other friends that oppose his views, and then they came around, and so he's thinking that Candace is going to be one of those friends that come around. Personally, because I feel like I can understand a spirit like Candace Owens, right? She's gonna look at this entire show, and she's going to basically, even if she pretends to still be friends with Brandon Tatum, Candace is not going to have anything to do with Brandon Tatum after this. Like, she's basically like, Brandon has sold out, right, to what she may perceive as her enemies, right? But she's going to, I think Candace Owens is going to look at this, right? Not only just the whole presentation of it, right? She's going to look at the comments, right? Because that's what I looked at. I looked at the comments, right? And it was pretty much a free for all in Brandon's audience, who is pro Israel, going in and basically narrating Candace Owens as this maniac, unhinged. I mean, I'm looking at the comments, right? And they're like, I stopped listening to her a long time ago. And I personally believe that ever since the Daily Wire separation with Candace, with her Israel stance, and Brandon knowing that that's just not what you were supposed to do, he's definitely going to be buck dancing super duper hard for the Jewish whites, right? And so I personally believe that somehow Brandon thought that he was going to possibly rise as like the new Candace Owens, kind of over on that right, where he would be like this. And he did get an increase in his population, in his audience, right? When Candace got her little fall, started having her fall from grace over on that conservative side. But he basically did this podcast with this woman, right? And it really just opened up the door for people to discredit Candace, right? Call her crazy, call her unhinged. And so I can imagine if I were Candace Owens and I looked at that entire podcast with Brandon and this chick Stella, you know, I would be like, you're not loyal. you're not loyal, you're not loyal, and I wouldn't have anything to do with him. And and I think really this is Brandon's shaming ritual for that side, because they basically need him on the mic talking about Candace, right? You want a mic with this other chick talking about your homegirl, your so-called friend, right? Instead of keeping your mouth off your homegirl, right? You are on the mic with another broad who is pro everything that your homegirl is against, and you talking about her. And then you got the title, Why Are You Friends with Candace? So this is telling, me at least, if I'm reading between the lines, that this is your I'm not friends with Candace anymore video, at least to me, or I don't want to be friends with Candace, or I'm breaking up with Candace, but I'm too simp and too vagina to do it, right? So I'm gonna just do a video like this that I know is gonna piss her off, and then I'm gonna let the audience go in on her ass in the comments. Do you see? Like, it's crazy. I mean, just read the comments, and I was reading them this morning. It's like, good for her for calling Candace out by name, right? But still respecting Officer Tatum. See, Brandon is trying to prank. It's almost like this dude is trying to narrate himself as like a victim of one of his friends. I'm a victim of one of my friends, basically, right? And he gotta get on the mic and put his friend's name on the table, talking about his homegirl with another chick. This dude is not loyal. This dude is not loyal. If I was Candace Owens, I would really, I would definitely cut Brandon Tatum off. He seemed fake and phony anyways. And he been getting exposed for just bootlicking, just over bootlicking, right? And looking crazy as hell. These, you know, Aryan white people have just been talking crazy to that man, and all he got to do is just take it. Ugh, I could not. I could not be one of those black people. I just could not. I am about to go to bed, baby. You said, Auntie, you need to go to bed. I am about to go to bed. But this was interesting, though. Check out Mr. Let Go. This dude is on the rabbit hole about Charlie Kirk wife and how he thinks that she may have been part of a cabal to take over Charlie's organization because Charlie was changing his position. And can I just say something? You know, if you are a 31-year-old man, right? And this is where, I give people credit where it's due. Again, I'm not a Charlie Kirk fan or anything like that. But I can look at just the evolution of a person outside of social designs and idealism. And it's like, look, if you're 31 and you're able to change your positions about something after you've seen the patterns of things living this thing called life, you are a mature person, right? And you can only mature from there. And again, whatever idealisms that I feel like Charlie Kirk cleaved onto, he did it for the money. Because again, people will pay for people to talk and spew their ideologies. And there's a base of people, again, that Trump did target, those rural whites that Hillary Clinton called deplorables, right? Those folks, right? They're still a segment of the Trump voter base. They're still in the political process now. And Charlie Kirk was integral in maintaining that base for Trump. And when you maintaining a base, you got to talk like these people want you to talk. So if I got to be this white dude, I'm not really necessarily racist, but if I got to, for you to give me this money, if I got to play this white dude that's racist, right, or have bigot idealisms, right, to get your money, right, that's what I'm going to do. I personally don't think that Charlie Kirk was a bigot. I think that Charlie was playing a role. He knew who to get the coins from. All right. Everybody knows where to get the coins from. Hell, look at Candace. That was her homeboy, right? But she getting coins from his death, right? Right? She know where the coins are at, and it's not Brigitte's balls. It's Charlie Kirk's murder mystery. So we ain't even hearing about becoming Brigitte and none of the cock and ball shit anymore because we got the Charlie Kirk thing, right? Anyways, let me get to my channel so I can delete this person. How do I delete this person? Oh, how do I do it? Oh, look at that. Boom. Get your ass out of here. Hid you from the channel. Now you can get your punk ass on and do something else. But anyways, shout out to Nicki Minaj. I have to give Nicki Minaj her flowers real quick because they had that obnoxious slut rapper running around pregnant now with some dude's baby that's not her husband's, right? They had this woman pregnant as hell on the block, working hard as hell to outsell that woman, and she did not do it. Like Cardi B looking like Boo Boo the Fool right now, working mad hard. And can we just be honest? Her album is trash. The only people that think that Cardi B's album is good are the industry executives who have to manipulate the truth about it, and then these ignorant ass obnoxious people who can resonate to dumbass shit, right? She literally dedicated her second album to taking shots at everybody in the industry that is more talented than her. And one thing I really hate is like, you got your modern day comics, right? And people are conflating obnoxious with actual funny. Like George Carlin was funny. Richard Pryor, funny. Right? Eddie Murphy, funny. You got all these duds, obnoxious ass people, and y'all want to prop these people as being funny. Because they're a big ass psyop. Like they somebody's low talent kid that you got to prop up and do extra shit to make the public believe that they're actually talented. This is Cardi B. She's not talented. She shouldn't even be in the hip hop space. She cannot write a beat. She cannot write a beat. And there's been a lot of Hispanic hip hop artists that have come into the hip hop space and they can actually rap. Her ass can't rap. She's illiterate to me. Like I hate hearing Cardi B. And this is what the industry keep propping up to young girls. Meanwhile, they are sleeping on Doja Cat. Okay, we know that Doja went through her demonic phase, everybody. Okay, she did. But I love Jealous Type and I love Gorgeous. And I listened to Doja's entire album. And if you are somebody who's into 80s music, which I am very much into 80s music, that is a good album. I think the arrangements of the album is good. I think that there's a little redundancy with some of the songs, but that is a good arranged album because Doja Cat is an organically good artist. And I'm tired of these industry props keep propping these non-talented people, and even trying to convince the public that these non-talented people are better than organically talented people. So kudos to Nicki Minaj, another win for the bar world, right? And I'm excited to see what she does with the sixth album. Hopefully she don't come up with no slut rap because that's just the thing to do, right? I felt like Pink Friday 2 had some substance. I didn't like all the songs. I'm tired of these albums, these artists dropping like 30 song albums. Just pick 8 good songs and make sure 3 of them are bangers and you will be okay. And stay off the internet too, because I'm tired of seeing these celebrities. We're seeing them too much and we're getting to know the people behind the music too much. And we're not liking what we see. And this is another reason why the music industry is hurting is because back in the day, artists were artists. No, we didn't have social media, but they still had radio and stuff like that. But you just, I can imagine if we had social media during the time of the Temptations. Well, maybe not. I feel like David Ruffin would totally be using social media all the time. David Ruffin would definitely be using social media. Ain't nobody trying to see you, Otis. It's my Instagram. But anyways, y'all, have a good night. Let me know what you think about the conspiracies about Charlie Kirk's wife. I think they're too soon. I think they're too soon. And, again, the guy, Mr. Let Go, he is creating his narrative through the lens of a power hungry woman that could not stand behind a powerful man that was actually, not a bad, powerful man. Like, I think that Charlie Kirk was probably more of a simp. And you get a beautiful woman like Erica Kirk, right? You know, I don't think that Charlie would have been anything but good to her, right? But that's still a beautiful woman that may have some aspirations of power. And if we've learned anything from Michelle Obama and Aisha Curry, when they're yip yapping in some of these interviews, a lot of these women who have to stand behind these powerful men, they actually hate it. They feel like they're the more powerful person, and yet they got to stand behind that man, right? And so that is a scenario in life. So, anyways, you guys, let me know what you think about this. This was just a random live stream. I didn't plan it, but I was just looking at some of these YouTube feeds, and I'm like, you got Brandon Tatum slick turning on Candace, because I just look at that whole interview as like a slick turn on Candace. It was a great opportunity for Brandon to open up his platform and have all of these people go in on their true feelings about Candace. I stopped watching Candace a long time ago. She went on the deep end. I agree with her. You need to distance yourself from Candace. So Brandon is probably getting a lot of pressure to distance himself from Candace Owens by the establishment that is keeping him paid. And, I think that, I think Candace Owens needs to watch her back. I really do think that Candace Owens, with her rhetoric, how she just going off on people, putting people names on shit that you don't even know is definitive or not, that's dangerous. I would never encourage anybody to just be putting people's names out there to the public like that, putting them under public scrutiny, and it may be that they didn't do anything, right? I feel like that's dangerous. Nobody would want that to be them. If somebody was who got over 5 million followers, right? She gets millions of views, and she's putting your name on her assumptions, right? That doesn't sit well with a lot of people when people are putting their name on their assumptions. And I personally believe that she has logical assumptions. Don't get me wrong, she goes back down these rhetorical rabbit holes, but that's what they are, rhetoricals, right? Because at the end of the day, the conclusion is still inconclusive. It's still think what you will, derive what you will. I'm going to send you down this roller coaster, and then at the end, you know, you're going to come up with your own conclusions. And that's pretty dangerous rhetoric to be running around with. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to have people thinking, but at the same time, you're putting people's names on stuff, you're accusing people, and even if you're not outright accusing them, your line of questioning is leading people to the mindset of accusation. Like a reasonable person, right, will listen to some of the shit that Candace is saying, and they were like, okay, even if she says I'm not accusing this person, the repetition and where you're leading a reasonable person to believe, it sounds like conclusion. It doesn't just sound like rhetorical questions. But anyways, it sounds like Brandon is turning on her. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like this conservative base is really splitting off, right? Where you got your pro-Israel conservative people, and then you have your sort of, I don't want to say that they're anti-Israel, they're just anti-Israel having anything to do with US decision making, and even the United States backing off of Israel decision making, especially since I think, with the Gaza thing, right, it really did cause a lot of people to step back and think. And I think the reason why Israel is getting such a bad reputation, and the reason why so many people are not looking at them favorably, is because when you're talking about a war, like even, with Hamas, a lot of people are still looking at Israel. You're not a non military, state. You're nuclear, you have nukes, right? And you got aid from all these powers. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't really see a war here. It's an insurgency, and that's what a lot of people feel like it is. So, I'm not going to use, even though, a lot of people will argue that this is a genocide, that people, the Israel, the reason why people are not favorable to them is because they feel like they're wiping out people who are not armed, that people, innocent, civilians are dying. I'm gonna tell you, I had to stop going on X, after that October, like after that stuff started popping off with what Israel was doing to, basically obliterate those people, so that they can take their land. I had to stop looking at the videos on X. I don't even go on X like that because I got tired of looking at those images of those, kids and stuff. And, I sympathize with kids who are victims of war on any side because they're casualties. They had nothing to do with the decision making of somebody around them. Just like when war comes to America, and these nations, things get volatile, we're going to see a lot of American kids that are going to be casualties to war, and they're not going to have anything to do with the reason why people are moving on this country. Maybe their parents voted for people that they thought was going to be in their best interest. Meanwhile, these people were voted in to go and piss off people around the world. So I pray for everybody. Keep your prayers up. Keep your prayers up because the world is crazy. United States, obviously, it's getting hot with Venezuela and Iran. And so I just feel like there's going to be some global volatility in the brew. But these are the last days. And so things are supposed to be like that. So, anyways, you guys, have a wonderful evening. Thanks for you guys who tuned in to my random live stream. Maybe I'll do one on Thursday. Kamala Harris is back on the microphone. Poor Democrats. Who do they have? If you're a Democrat, who do the Democrats have? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? Is it who's their leaders? Like who are their players? Who should we be watching? If you are a politically neutral person, if you're a staunchly independent person, and you're a Democrat, right? Who are the Democrats to watch on your side, right? I don't hear anything really happening on the Democrat side. You hear about Jasmine Crockett, but unfortunately, Jasmine, they are kind of toning her down a little bit. She's looking a little less city girlish, which I like. and I think that again she needs to tone down some, because here's the thing: people don't realize, there's like black people and Negroes, right? Black people and Negroes do not talk the same way, right? They try to project, the black etiquette as being the black need growth or Negroes, right? And I say that in the more lower value of intelligence way, right? Right? Black people are intelligent. Black people can articulate, right? You have a segment of our poverty line people, which they like to project as being the overall persona of our people, right? Those folks talk with less grace. Those folks talk like the projections of what the white media says, vicariously through their black faces, like Megan Thee Stallion and all your gangster rappers and all your folks that they pay over there, right, to project images of black idealisms of self, right? Jasmine Crockett is one of those people. And that's why I don't like black women like that, because you're placating into the idealisms, the persona of a black woman. Meanwhile, I feel like as me as a black woman, I've always been like, you're trying to act white. You talk like you're a white person, right? You're into white things. And it's like, I am just a free spirited person who's into whatever I like, right? And I don't understand what it's like to be white, because I feel like I'm cooler than most white people that I've hung around, but I'm definitely more graceful than some of these tacky folks of my own kin folks that makes our people look bad, right? I don't like ignorant black people. I don't like that our people continue to buy into these white funded projections of our people, right? And then it narrates the whole damn community terribly, right? So I'm all about protecting the idealisms and the image of intelligent black people, but I just don't buy into idealisms that my character should conform to a white manufactured idea of a black woman. That's just silly. But, anyways, you guys, love your neighbor as yourself. If you would not disrespect or abuse yourself, do not disrespect or abuse your neighbor. Bye.